Everyone, today I want to challenge a popular belief that we should be kind to everyone all the time. Now, before you label me as heartless, hear me out. Kindness is beautiful. It makes the world softer, more compassionate, but kindness without boundaries, that can be dangerous to your mental health, your time, and your peace. Some people will take advantage of your kindness, some will mistake it for weakness, and worst of all, you might begin to lose yourself in the constant need to please others. We are taught to say yes, to always help, to avoid conflict. But real kindness doesn't mean self-sacrifice. It means being honest, firm, and respectful to others and to yourself. Kindness is often seen as a virtue, something we should constantly extend to others without hesitation. But what happens when that kindness begins to chip away at our own well-being? When we're constantly putting others first, saying yes, even when we're tired, stressed, or overwhelmed, we slowly begin to burn out. This kind of kindness becomes a quiet self-betrayal. It teaches people that our time, energy, and emotions are always available, no matter the cost to ourselves. And over time, we internalize the idea that our needs are less important than keeping everyone around us comfortable and happy. Mental health suffers in this cycle. We become overextended, emotionally drained, and sometimes even resentful, though we try to hide it behind a smile. It's not just about being nice. It's about the silent toll it takes on us when we never say no, when we never put ourselves first. It creates anxiety, guilt, and a fear of disappointing others. These are signs not of weakness, but of a deeply ingrained pattern of self-neglect. There's a difference between kindness and people-pleasing. One is generous and empowering. The other is exhausting and often rooted in fear of rejection, conflict, or being seen as selfish. It's essential to recognize that being kind doesn't mean allowing yourself to be walked over or drained. Prioritizing your mental health is not cruelty, it's survival. And when you take care of yourself first, your kindness can come from a place of genuine abundance, not silent suffering. Being kind to everyone might sound noble on the surface, but the reality is that not everyone deserves your kindness, and not everyone will treat it with respect. When you offer kindness indiscriminately, without recognizing who values it and who exploits it, you open yourself up to manipulation. There are people who see kindness not as a strength, but as an opportunity. They test how far they can push your boundaries, how much they can take, and how little they can give in return. What starts as a genuine gesture of goodwill can quickly turn into a pattern where your kindness is expected, not appreciated. You're no longer seen as generous, you're seen as a resource to be used. This isn't just hypothetical. Think about how often people say yes to things they don't want to do, simply to avoid conflict or maintain an image. Whether it's taking on extra work, tolerating disrespect, or agreeing to plans you have no energy for, each small act chips away at your sense of autonomy. And the worst part, the more you do it, the more it becomes the norm. People stop asking if you're okay with it. They assume you'll comply. They assume your kindness is infinite and unconditional. And when you finally say no, you're seen as difficult or cold, not as someone simply protecting their limits. Being kind to everyone all the time often sends the message that you'll put yourself last, no matter what. That kind of open-door policy doesn't lead to deeper connections or mutual respect. It leads to imbalance. True relationships, whether personal or professional, should be built on reciprocity, not one-sided sacrifice. When people see that your kindness comes with no boundaries, some will inevitably take advantage. Not because they're evil, but because they can. So it's up to you to show that your kindness is intentional, not automatic. When you respect yourself, the right people will respect you too. Setting boundaries is often misunderstood, especially by those who equate kindness with constant availability. But in truth, boundaries are not barriers. They are bridges to healthier relationships and a healthier self. When you set clear limits, you're not being rude or distant. You're being honest about what you can and cannot give. This honesty fosters respect. It tells others, I value myself enough to protect my time, energy, and emotional space. And if someone truly values you, they won't be threatened by your boundaries, they'll honor them. People often avoid setting boundaries because they fear being seen as selfish or uncaring. We're conditioned to put others first, to be agreeable, and to go along with things even when we're uncomfortable. But the irony is that the more you stretch yourself to please everyone, the less of yourself you have left. You begin to feel resentful, overwhelmed, and disconnected from your own needs. Boundaries are the remedy to that erosion. They allow you to say no without guilt and yes without resentment. Think about how often people say yes to things that drain them. Working late, doing favors they didn't want to, listening to someone vent for hours when they have nothing left to give. It's not because they want to, it's because they don't know how to say no without feeling like a bad person. But saying no doesn't make you unkind. It makes you real. It makes your eventual yes more meaningful. When you have boundaries, people know that your time and attention are not given lightly, they are given with intention. And perhaps most importantly, boundaries teach others how to treat you. If you allow others to cross your limits without consequence, they will continue to do so. But when you assert your needs with clarity and confidence, you show people that your kindness has depth, not weakness. You show that you have self-respect. And that is the foundation of every truly kind and lasting relationship, not endless giving, but mutual understanding and balance. True kindness is not about pleasing everyone or keeping the peace at all costs. It's about showing up with honesty, integrity, and self-awareness. Many people confuse kindness with being agreeable, soft-spoken, or constantly accommodating. But real kindness isn't always easy. Sometimes it means having difficult conversations, setting firm boundaries, or walking away from situations that are harmful. That kind of kindness requires courage, not compliance. Being kind doesn't mean silencing your voice to make others comfortable. It doesn't mean tolerating disrespect, manipulation, or abuse just to avoid confrontation. In fact, allowing people to overstep your limits without speaking up isn't kindness, it's self-neglect. The most genuine acts of kindness come from people who are whole within themselves, who know where they begin and where they end, and who refuse to abandon their truth just to keep others happy. When you protect your peace and respect your own boundaries, you teach others how to do the same. You model a version of kindness that isn't rooted in fear or guilt, but in clarity and strength. You become someone who gives freely, not out of obligation, but out of intention. That energy is powerful, and people feel the difference. There is also a profound honesty in being able to say no, to express disagreement, or to admit that you can't be everything for everyone. That kind of honesty is a form of kindness too, because it's authentic. It doesn't sugarcoat, it doesn't pretend. It tells people, this is where I stand. This is what I need. And in doing so, it invites real connection, based not on performance, but on truth. If your kindness always requires you to shrink yourself, it's not kindness, it's survival mode. And survival mode wears you down. But when your kindness is rooted in self-awareness and firm boundaries, it becomes something far more powerful. It becomes a choice, not a burden. It becomes a gift that uplifts both you and the people who genuinely deserve it. When you stop being kind to everyone and start being selective about where and how you give your kindness, its value increases. Just like anything that's rare and intentional, selective kindness carries more weight because it's real, it's not automatic, and it's not performed out of obligation. When people know that your time, energy, and care aren't handed out freely to everyone, they begin to understand that receiving your kindness is meaningful. It's a reflection of trust, of choice, and of respect. And in return, the people who truly value you will respond with the same level of thoughtfulness. Being kind to everyone sounds noble in theory, but in reality, when kindness is spread too thin, it loses its power. If you constantly give your emotional energy to people who don't reciprocate, you have less to offer the people who genuinely deserve it. Your closest relationships can suffer because you're drained by the demands of others who don't value your efforts. But when you become more intentional about who receives your support, encouragement, and compassion, you create space for deeper and more fulfilling connections. Selective kindness is also a form of emotional intelligence. It means you can read the room. You can tell when someone is taking advantage of your good nature and when someone is in genuine need. You learn to differentiate between those who seek to grow with you and those who only seek to use you. And when you choose to be kind from a place of awareness instead of habit, that kindness becomes a conscious act of generosity. It's not something people expect or feel entitled to, it's something they appreciate. It's not about becoming cold or closed off, it's about becoming clear. When people know that you respect yourself enough to protect your energy, they approach you with more care. They understand that your kindness isn't weakness, it's strength with discipline. They start to value your words, your presence, and your attention in a deeper way. And that's the kind of kindness that actually changes people. Not the kind that tries to please everyone, but the kind that knows its own worth and shares itself with purpose. When you stop trying to be kind to everyone, you create space to actually be kind to yourself. This shift in focus is crucial because so many people give everything they have to others and leave nothing for their own emotional well-being. They spend their days making sure everyone else is okay while silently struggling inside. They answer messages even when they're exhausted, say yes to things they don't want to do, and carry emotional weight that doesn't belong to them, all under the banner of being kind. But true kindness begins at home. It begins with treating yourself with the same compassion, patience, and care that you so easily offer to others. Being kind to yourself doesn't mean being selfish. It means recognizing your limits and honoring your needs. It means allowing yourself to rest when you're tired, to speak up when something doesn't feel right, and to walk away from things that no longer serve you. So often, people forget that they are allowed to say no without explanation, to choose themselves without guilt, and to put their peace above someone else's comfort. When you give yourself that permission, you begin to heal. You begin to reclaim your energy, your time, and your voice. The truth is, you cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot continue to give love, support, and care if you are constantly drained, neglected, and emotionally depleted. When you start showing up for yourself, something powerful happens. You become more grounded, more resilient, and more authentic. Your relationships become more balanced because you're no longer giving out of guilt, you're giving from a place of fullness. This self-kindness also teaches others how to treat you. When people see that you prioritize your well-being, they learn to respect your boundaries, your time, and your values. They learn that your kindness is a reflection of inner strength, not a weakness to be exploited. And most importantly, you begin to feel whole, not because everyone approves of you, but because you've learned to approve of yourself. That is the kind of kindness that lasts. That is the kind of kindness that changes lives, starting with your own. When you stop being kind to everyone, you give yourself the ability to live more authentically. Constant kindness, especially the kind that's rooted in fear of rejection or the desire to be liked, can become a mask. It hides your true thoughts, your real feelings, and your genuine preferences just to avoid disappointing others. You become someone who agrees too often, stays silent when something feels wrong, and puts other people's comfort before your own truth. Over time, that doesn't just hurt, it erases you. It blurs the lines between who you are and who you've been pretending to be for the sake of harmony. Authenticity requires the courage to show up as yourself, even when that self isn't what someone else expects. It means being honest instead of agreeable, being firm instead of passive, and being real even when it's uncomfortable. When you stop being kind to everyone, you stop performing. You start expressing your opinions honestly, setting limits clearly, and choosing relationships that value you for who you are, not for what you can do for them. That kind of living is rare, but it's freeing. It means you're no longer bending to fit someone else's expectations, you're standing in your own. This shift doesn't make you unkind, it makes you honest. And honesty, even when it's difficult, is a form of respect, both for yourself and others. You begin to build connections that are based on truth rather than obligation. You stop attracting people who only like the agreeable version of you, and instead you attract those who appreciate your authenticity. People who stay in your life won't be there because you constantly say yes, they'll be there because you're genuine, because you're clear about your values, and because you don't compromise your identity just to be accepted. Letting go of the need to be kind to everyone also teaches you to tolerate discomfort. You learn that it's okay if someone is disappointed by your boundaries. It's okay if not everyone understands your decisions. Because the more you honor your truth, the more peace you find in being exactly who you are, not a version of yourself shaped by other people's expectations. You stop managing everyone else's emotions and start focusing on your own emotional freedom. And in that freedom, you find the power to build a life that feels honest, meaningful, and unapologetically yours. When you stop being kind to everyone, you also begin to understand the true nature of your time and energy. So often, people find themselves constantly saying yes to requests, giving away their precious hours, and draining themselves because they've been conditioned to believe that kindness means never saying no. But kindness isn't measured by how much you sacrifice, it's measured by how thoughtfully and intentionally you choose to give. When you stop being kind to everyone, you start to treat your time like the valuable limited resource that it is. You learn to say no without feeling guilty, and in doing so you create more space for the things, people, and activities that truly matter. We all have the same 24 hours in a day, yet we often squander hours on things that don't bring us fulfillment or joy, simply because we feel obligated. Whether it's agreeing to a last-minute favor from someone who never asks how you're doing, or attending an event out of politeness when you're mentally exhausted, those small decisions accumulate over time, leaving you with little to show for your energy except burnout. When you stop being kind to everyone, you recognize that each minute of your life is yours to spend wisely. You learn to prioritize your well-being and choose the moments when kindness should be extended, not out of guilt or habit, but because you genuinely want to. This doesn't mean you become a cold, unapproachable person. It means that you get clearer about who and what you are willing to give your time to. There is great power in intentionality. You become more present, more engaged, and more focused when you're not spreading yourself thin trying to please everyone. Instead of a diluted version of yourself, you show up as your authentic self, more connected, more energized, and more ready to offer meaningful contributions to the people and causes that truly align with your values. Your kindness is no longer a shallow response to external expectations, but a deeply rooted decision that enhances both your life and the lives of others. Furthermore, when you stop being kind to everyone, you begin to see the difference between relationships that are mutually respectful and those that are parasitic. Some people will take advantage of your kindness, only showing up when they need something and leaving when they don't. Others might see your compassion as an entitlement, something that should always be available on demand, but when you start saying no to those people, you create space for deeper, more meaningful connections. You find relationships where kindness is shared, not extracted, where both parties give and receive in a balanced, healthy way. In this way, selective kindness protects your energy and fosters relationships based on mutual respect, rather than one-sided dependency. The most profound shift, however, happens when you start to realize that saying no to others doesn't mean you're rejecting them, it means you're choosing yourself. You begin to realize that your own needs are not secondary to anyone else's. Saying no when you need to rest, or when you need space, is an act of self-love. It's the recognition that you are worthy of care, that your mental health, your emotions, and your time are valuable, and that you don't have to sacrifice them just to make someone else feel comfortable or happy. In a world that often encourages self-sacrifice, learning to say no becomes an act of courage and a powerful declaration of your self-worth. Moreover, by not being kind to everyone, you also begin to understand that not every interaction requires your emotional investment. Some people will try to draw you into drama, negativity, or conflict, and while it's easy to want to step in and fix things or offer a listening ear, there are times when doing so will only drain you further. You don't have to take on every problem or carry the weight of other people's emotional turmoil. Learning to detach from situations that aren't yours to solve is liberating. It gives you permission to protect your peace, focus on your own life, and stop carrying the emotional burdens of others. As you stop being kind to everyone, you also begin to trust your instincts more. You become better at reading people, understanding who genuinely deserves your kindness, and who is simply taking advantage of your good nature. You start to trust yourself enough to say no to relationships, requests, and situations that feel draining or unhealthy. And while this might be uncomfortable at first, especially if you're used to being the yes person, it becomes empowering. You learn to trust that by saying no to certain things, you are making room for the right opportunities, the right people, and the right experiences that will nurture you rather than deplete you. Finally, you realize that kindness is not just a one-way street, it's a dynamic force that needs to flow in both directions. When you stop being kind to everyone, you begin to attract the right kind of people into your life, the ones who will show up for you as you show up for them, the ones who won't take advantage of your generosity, but will reciprocate with respect and care. By selectively choosing where to invest your kindness, you create a balanced ecosystem of relationships where everyone's needs are considered, and where your kindness doesn't come at the cost of your own happiness or mental well-being. This is the true power of selective kindness. It allows you to not only preserve your energy and peace, but also to build deeper, more authentic connections. When you stop being kind to everyone, one of the first things you begin to notice is the liberation that comes with not constantly managing other people's perceptions of you. So much of our daily energy is consumed by the worry of whether we are liked, appreciated, or seen as good. We try to please everyone around us, perhaps out of fear of being judged, rejected, or disliked. We become people pleasers, saying yes to requests, attending social events we don't want to be at, and sacrificing our comfort to ensure others are content. But when you stop that cycle, you free yourself from the chains of others' expectations. You begin to live without constantly wondering if your actions are measuring up to someone else's standards. This freedom allows you to make choices that align more closely with your own values and desires, not the needs and whims of others. You stop chasing validation, and instead you start living authentically. One of the unexpected consequences of no longer being kind to everyone is that you learn to become more aware of your own needs and emotions. When you're constantly focused on others, you can easily lose sight of yourself. You begin to ignore your own limits and desires in favor of keeping the peace or meeting the demands of others. But when you stop people-pleasing, you develop a stronger sense of self-awareness. You begin to recognize when you're overextending yourself, when you're emotionally exhausted, or when you simply need to say no. You get better at listening to your body and mind, learning when to step back and recharge. This heightened awareness helps you make more conscious decisions about how and where to invest your energy, ensuring that you're not depleted by demands that don't truly align with your purpose. This shift also encourages you to take responsibility for your own happiness. Too often we put the burden of our well-being on others, believing that if we are kind enough or do enough, others will provide us with the validation or support we need. But relying on external sources for happiness is an unsustainable path. When you stop being kind to everyone and begin prioritizing yourself, you learn that your happiness is not something that can be outsourced, it's something that you must cultivate within yourself. You begin to recognize that it's okay to put yourself first, to nurture your own joy, and to seek out the things and people that genuinely contribute to your growth. This shift towards self-sufficiency and happiness is empowering, and it allows you to give from a place of abundance rather than emptiness. Another profound aspect of reducing the amount of kindness you offer to everyone is that you develop a deeper sense of discernment in your relationships. It's easy to fall into the trap of giving endlessly to people who don't appreciate it or take it for granted. Over time, this can breed resentment and frustration, as your efforts feel one-sided and unreciprocated. By setting clear boundaries and being more selective in where you invest your kindness, you begin to see more clearly who values you and who simply takes advantage of you. This clarity allows you to focus your energy on relationships that are mutually supportive, where kindness is given and received in a balanced way. You stop spending time on people who drain you and start nurturing relationships that truly nourish you. Selective kindness also leads to the development of more meaningful connections. When you're no longer offering kindness indiscriminately, your interactions become more intentional and heartfelt. You stop giving to fill a void, or because you feel obligated, and instead you give because you truly want to. This shift transforms the nature of your relationships. You create deeper, more authentic bonds with people who genuinely appreciate your presence and who are willing to show up for you in return. When your kindness is rooted in sincerity and authenticity, it fosters a connection that is built on mutual respect and understanding, rather than obligation or routine. As you practice this selective kindness, you also cultivate a sense of inner peace and confidence. For many people, the act of constantly being kind to everyone is a way to avoid conflict, to keep things smooth, and to maintain a sense of peace in their relationships. But this approach often comes at the cost of their own peace of mind. When you stop trying to be kind to everyone, you stop sacrificing your own peace to avoid confrontation or discomfort. Instead, you embrace the discomfort of setting boundaries, saying no, and standing firm in your own values. Over time, this leads to a deep sense of inner peace because you are no longer at war with yourself, trying to please everyone while neglecting your own needs. Moreover, the act of no longer being kind to everyone encourages personal growth and resilience. In a world where people are often taught to be agreeable and self-sacrificial, stepping away from that mindset requires courage. It forces you to confront your own fears, whether it's the fear of rejection, conflict, or disappointing others. By learning to navigate these fears and embracing the discomfort of setting boundaries, you develop greater emotional resilience. You begin to trust yourself more, knowing that you can handle the discomfort that comes with prioritizing your own well-being. This growth extends beyond just saying no. It becomes a life philosophy that empowers you to navigate challenging situations with clarity and confidence. Furthermore, by limiting your kindness to those who genuinely deserve it, you begin to see the world in a more realistic light. The idea that we should be kind to everyone is often rooted in the belief that kindness is always reciprocated and that everyone is deserving of our energy. But the reality is that not everyone operates from a place of mutual respect, and some people will take your kindness and never give anything back. By being selective about where you direct your kindness, you begin to understand that not all people are worthy of your time and energy. This doesn't mean becoming cynical or harsh, it simply means becoming wise in your interactions. You start to recognize who adds value to your life and who merely takes from it, and you make conscious decisions to protect your emotional and mental well-being. Lastly, when you stop being kind to everyone, you open up the opportunity to live a life that is more intentional and aligned with your true self. Instead of living a life that is constantly influenced by the needs and expectations of others, you begin to live according to your own desires, values, and priorities. You become more focused on what truly matters to you, whether it's pursuing a passion, spending time with people who uplift you, or investing in your own personal development. This shift allows you to create a life that is purposeful and fulfilling, where your actions are driven by authenticity rather than the need to please others. In doing so, you experience a greater sense of control over your life and a deeper sense of satisfaction in the choices you make.